Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy? Sports and Fitness Rants. I'm back, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. Got another great video for you guys today. As usual, you guys know the deal on this channel, man. We must continue to set the record straight. Stop the lies. Stop the narratives. Stop them from rewriting history. Bending reality. We must hold the standard. Uphold the standard of greatness, guys, because they continue to lower the bar for a lot of these players, man, and they still want to compare them to the players from the past. Even though they've lowered the bar, they've lowered the standard. And in this video, this is what we're going to speak about. How Nick Wright is always pumping up LeBron James' 2018 NBA Finals Game 1, where he scored 51 points against the Golden State Warriors. He loves to pump that game as the greatest NBA Finals performance in the history of the game. He really tries to make it seem as if LeBron James' 51 points in a loss, mind you, is the greatest finals performance of all time. This is what Nick Wright does. This is them lowering the bar, guys, lowering the standard, and we're going to talk about it in this video, guys, because once again, LeBron James is celebrated for mediocrity, guys. And I want to thank you guys, everyone across the world, everyone across the states has been supporting my channel, guys. Much respect to everybody out there. I am truly humbled by all the support, guys. For real, man. It means a lot. So thank you to all the real basketball fans that continue to stand up, man. And you guys know what to do. Turn the volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So, yes, guys, like I said, man, LeBron James is always being celebrated for mediocrity. I've talked about this many times on my channel as it relates to LeBron James and the championships, like the losses, the 4-6 NBA Finals record. What do? They make excuses for all LeBron James losses. They make excuse for anything that has happened in LeBron James' career. It's never his fault, right? I talked about this the other day, guys, right? It ain't his fault. It's always someone else's fault. The coaches, the players, the fans, the GM, whatever it is, it's never on him. Even though he's the best player, it's never on him. And what this is the media, LeBron James fans, lowering the standard, right? Never holding him accountable for anything, guys, right? Lowering the bar for LeBron James to appear as if he's so great that he's right over the top of the bar because they have to lower it for him. And when we think about Nick Wright, who is, one of the main guys who's always lowering the bar for LeBron James to step over, he's always lowering the standard for LeBron James. Nick Wright loves to give you stats. He loves to say things, but he never gives you context, and he has no historical perspective, no historical knowledge, Nick Wright. So everything that he tells you is not given to you through the historical perspective lens or a lens of historical perspective. He just does a lot of rambling about LeBron James, and he does blanket statements referring to LeBron James in his career. Like I said, just stats, right? But he won't give you any context behind these stats. It's always just a generic statement for Nick Wright. And a lot of people love to recite the things that Nick Wright says on TV because they believe that Nick Wright knows what he's talking about. Meanwhile, all you have to do is do some little bit of research, do your homework, watch the video footage, and it'll expose everything that Nick Wright says as being false, as being a narrative, and him trying to bend reality, rewrite the history, and what, guys? Lower the standard here, guys. So when we think about Nick Wright and some of the things that he says about LeBron James' 2018 NBA Finals Game 1 performance being the greatest game in NBA Finals history, like, once again, what are we doing here? This is the same thing that I'm always talking about, guys. They never give responsibility to LeBron James for any of the failures, any things that happened in his career. So when you say LeBron James is 4-6 in the NBA Finals and you compare it to Michael Jordan 6-0, what do guys like Nick Wright do? They give you a bunch of excuses, right? They try to blame this guy. They blame that guy. They try to blame the competition, right? LeBron James has played against the greatest teams of all time. Only LeBron James has played against any good teams. No one else in the history of the NBA Finals has ever played against any competition but LeBron James. This is what Nick Wright wants you to believe. These are the narratives he's pumping out there. So when you hear him say that LeBron James' Game 1 from the 2018 NBA Finals is the greatest finals performance that he's ever seen in the history of the game, individual performance is a joke, guys. It's laughable. First off, how can that be the greatest individual performance in the history of a game when they lost that game? You're telling me that the greatest individual performance in NBA Finals history came during a loss? So LeBron James was so great in that game, his team didn't even win. That's a great performance in NBA Finals. This is what Nick Wright wants you to believe, guys. I've heard him say this many times over and over again as it relates to that Game 1 2018 NBA Finals when LeBron James sold out at the end of that game, right? By dropping the ball off to a George Hill with seconds to go with his team by 1 point. LeBron James drives the lane, being guarded by Steph Curry, and then dumps the ball up to George Hill underneath the rim. putting George Hill in the worst position possible, not setting him up for success, setting him up for failure, putting all the responsibility, all the ownership on a George Hill who's supposed to be a role player. Here's LeBron James having one of the greatest games of his career, and he drives the ball off to George Hill at the end of that game. But Nick Wright will tell you that's the greatest performance, individual performance in NBA Finals history. Once again, how is this possible when LeBron James and his team did not even win that game, and LeBron James came up short in the fourth quarter, at the end of the fourth quarter, by dropping off to George Hill, right? Because he's scared, he's afraid of the free throw line. We all know that. Once again, it exposes LeBron James as a true closer, as a true competitor, right? But also LeBron James ended up having what? A mental collapse, right? Going off on J.R. Smith at the end of that game, blaming J.R. Smith for the blunder. Meanwhile, it was LeBron James who made the blunder, dropping the ball to George Hill. That was a bigger blunder than J.R. Smith running out the time on the clock because he thought that they had the lead and there was time and he was running the time off. To me, LeBron James dropping the ball to George Hill under the rim was a bigger blunder than J.R. Smith's blunder, because J.R. Smith's quote-unquote blunder did not cost them the game. It did not. But meanwhile, LeBron James dropping the ball to George Hill almost cost them the game because you put a role player in a situation that he should have never been in. LeBron James should have been the best player, supposed to be the best player on that team, the leader of that team, had a game going where you're supposed to be, like Nick Wright says, having the greatest individual performance in NBA Finals history. But at the end of the game, when your team really needs a basket, you drop it off to George Hill. You put everything on George Hill. You see the mindset of a LeBron James, guys, versus a Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan would never do that. Michael Jordan's not going to be going. Let's think about the 1993 NBA Finals. Michael Jordan in Game 4, he went for 55 points in a win. In a win. The Bulls won that game, right? And that was a tough game where the Bulls, I believe, won by, I want to say they won by 5 points. Maybe they won that game, or 4 points, whatever it was. But it was a very close game. Michael Jordan scored 55 points in that game. This wasn't Michael Jordan down the stretch dropping off to B.J. Armstrong and being like, yo, B.J., I need you to bail me out, man. Hit a couple of shots for me. This wasn't Michael Jordan putting Scottie Pippen in awkward positions or putting the onus on a Horace Grant or Bill Carver at the end of these games. This was Michael Jordan, the closer, the leader, right? And doing those things, stepping up, raising his level of play when it matters most, right? Charles Barkley came to play. He was balling out, but Michael Jordan was able to raise it to another level. He didn't put his role-playing teammates out there, right? Put them in awkward positions, put all the pressure on them, the responsibility on them. He was the best player. He was going to take that shot because Michael Jordan was not afraid of these moments. LeBron James has been afraid. He's been inconsistent in those moments. But Nick Wright will tell us that that's the greatest individual performance in an NBA Finals in the history of the game. In a loss. Once again, in a loss. This is the bar. This is how they lowered the standard for LeBron James over the years, guys. Remember, the losses do not matter for LeBron James. They only matter for the other great players. It only matters for Will Chamberlain. It only matters for Jerry West. It only matters for Michael Jordan, right? He's 1-9 without Scottie Pippen. So all the losses for Michael Jordan, no matter what stats he put up, no matter the kind of quote-unquote help he had, all of those losses count for Michael Jordan. Meanwhile, all the help LeBron James has had, none of his losses count for him, even though he's formed super teams and got free agents and signed all these people, right? All this stuff has happened, all these trades, but LeBron James gets excuses made for all of his losses. This is what Nick Wright and the media does. And all his fans, they always make an excuse. It's always somebody else's fault, but not for any other all-time great. But they want to compare LeBron James to these other all-time greats. You see what I'm saying, guys? The standard has been lowered for LeBron James. He's the only superstar in the history of the game that never has to take responsibility for anything that happens to his team. Never does. Never, guys. It's always somebody else's fault. It's someone else's problem. Just like it was George Hill's problem in Game 1 of the 2018 NBA Finals. But Nick Wright will tell you that LeBron James had the greatest individual performance in NBA Finals history. Can anyone tell me what LeBron James did in the overtime of that game? Does anybody know what LeBron James did in the overtime of that game? He did absolutely nothing in the overtime of that game because LeBron James packed it up. He was already mentally checked out because LeBron James is emotional, right? And LeBron James is all over the place out there on the court, man. He can never keep himself together. He has terrible body language, and he's not a true competitor. He's not a real leader, and he's not a real man. And this is why LeBron James tried to put all the blame on a J.R. Smith to make it seem like J.R. Smith cost them the game. You would have really thought that the Cleveland Cavaliers were down by 1 point with a couple of seconds left when J.R. Smith ran that clock out. That's the reaction from LeBron James. You would have thought that cost them a Game 1 victory. Instead, all it did was allow them to go to an overtime. You think that if J.R. Smith would have passed the ball to LeBron James off of that rebound, that LeBron James was going to take that shot? No, it wouldn't have. He would have threw it back to J.R. Smith or somebody else and put the onus on them to make that jump shot at the end of the game. But then LeBron James wants to sell out or check out himself mentally, blame everything on J.R. Smith, and then sit on the bench like a little baby. Sit on the bench soaking like a little baby, even though you still have an overtime period to play. So if we think about Michael Jordan, once in the end, they want to compare him to Michael Jordan. We're always going to compare him to Michael Jordan here. If you guys remember, once again, 1991 NBA Finals, the first NBA Finals Michael Jordan has played in. Game 3, series tied 1 game apiece. The Bulls are down by 2 points. Scottie Pippen fouls out of the game at the end of regulation with about 11 seconds to go. Whatever the case may be, Scottie Pippen fouls out at the end of that game. Did Michael Jordan go crazy on Scottie Pippen? Did Michael Jordan lose it on Scottie Pippen and say, hey, man, I need you out here. You left me hanging. The series is tied 1 game apiece. We're going against the Lakers, have all the experience. Remember, the Lakers were the favorite to win that series going into that series, guys. Did Michael Jordan lose it on the bench? Did he go crazy? No. There was still time on the clock. The Bulls were down by 2. Michael Jordan got the ball in the inbounds, drove down the court, hit the game-tying shot, sent the game to overtime, and then in overtime, he carried the Bulls. He led them as a leader to the win in Game 3 and gave him a 2-1 series lead. That's what Michael Jordan did in the moment. He did not get wrapped up in Scottie Pippen being fouled out and try to blame a Scottie Pippen, look for an excuse. This is what LeBron James did when he was blaming J.R. Smith there. That's all he was doing, is he was giving himself a built-in excuse so at the end of everything, he could point the finger and say, hey, you know, we would have had it if J.R. Smith didn't run the clock out. This is what he wants his fans to believe, the media to believe, everyone watching to believe that it was J.R. Smith's fault, or it was George Hill's fault, or it was Tyronn Lue's fault. It was someone else's fault, not the best player. Not the guy who's getting paid all the money. It's never his fault. It doesn't add up, guys. You cannot be the greatest player on your team. You cannot be considered the greatest player of your era, but you never take the blame. It can't be both ways. If you want to be the greatest, then you got to take the blame. LeBron James wants all the credit. He wants all the love, all the fame, right? But he don't want to take none of the blame. Can't be both ways. Told you this, guys, many times on this channel. So when we think about Nick Wright trying to hype up that Game 1 in 2018 NBA Finals, once again, it shows and proves that all the LeBron James supporters lower the bar for him. They lower the standard for him. That's the best performance, individual performance, NBA Finals history. LeBron James, 51 points in a loss, where he did nothing in the overtime. He completely lost it on his teammates, showed terrible leadership, terrible body language. I mean, my goodness, this is the best performance? Michael Jordan's 55 points in a win in 1993 Game 4. That wasn't more impressive. To me, that was much more impressive. Michael Jordan's entire 1993 Finals was way more impressive than anything that LeBron James has ever done in the NBA Finals, guys. Way more impressive. LeBron James playing on his stacked super teams in the NBA Finals is 4-6. But they want to pump him up in that Game 1 performance in a loss. He got swept. So LeBron James, his biggest supporter, Nick Wright, the guy who constantly lies for him and bends reality, rewrites the history. This guy, his biggest supporter, is constantly bumping up LeBron James' Game 1 2018 Finals performance as the greatest individual performance in NBA Finals history. But the man got swept in the Finals and he lost that game. How is that the greatest Finals performance? Game 1 in a loss where you played no defense on Kevin Durant? None. You're switching screens. This is what LeBron James was doing. He was ducking Kevin Durant for multiple seasons. 2017, 2018, it was the same thing. He was ducking Kevin Durant in the Finals, switching screens, having guys like Richard Jefferson guard Kevin Durant, the Jeff Greens, the Iman Shumpers, the J.R. Smiths. These guys were guarding Kevin Durant. LeBron James was ducking the smoke. Even though he had help out there, he had guys like Kevin Love, and he had the Tristan Thompsons, the Rodney Hoods, the Jordan Clarksons. All these guys were on his team over the years, all these trades they made. Game 1, 2018 NBA Finals, the greatest individual performance. How about Elgin Baylor's 61 points against the mighty Boston Celtics in the 1962 NBA Finals? No one wants to talk about that, though. In Game 5, when Elgin Baylor dropped 61 points in a win, when his team won. No one wants to talk about that against the legendary Boston Celtics with Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, Tommy Heinsohn, Sam Jones, K.C. Jones. Nobody wants to talk about that performance by Elgin Baylor. That's not a greater performance than LeBron James' Game 1 in 2018 where he scored 51 points in a loss and he bailed down the overtime, completely folded up. You see what I'm saying, guys? People like Nick Wright and a lot of these fake analysts, they don't give you the perspective, the historical context behind these statements. So he'll just say that LeBron James' 51 points in Game 1 in 2018 is the greatest individual performance of all time based off of what? It's not based off reality, and it's not based off the history of the game. Because once again, I just told you, Michael Jordan's Game 4 in 93 to me was much more impressive. He scored 55 points. I mean, what are we talking about here? Once again, they want to promote LeBron James' stats, the stats, not the results of those stats. There have been guys who have scored way less points in an NBA Finals, but they were significantly more impactful than LeBron James' 51 points. Once again, what did he do in the overtime? He was a no-show, right? Folded up on his teammates, put all the ownership on them, all the blame on them, didn't play the lockdown defense, none of these things. But Nick Wright will tell you that's the greatest individual performance in an NBA Finals. Once again, proving that the bar is lowered for LeBron James versus any other superstar in the history of the game, guys. How about Magic Johnson's performance in the Finals, right? When Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went down in Game 5, and Magic Johnson came in and filled in for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? And ended up leading them to, was that Game 6, I believe. It might have been a Game 6, leading the Los Angeles as a rookie to the NBA championship in 1980 over the Houston Rockets. Does anyone going to talk about Magic Johnson's performance in that game where he scored, 42 points, I believe, and had like 15 rebounds or something in an NBA Finals as a rookie and wins Finals MVP? That's not a more impressive performance than LeBron James' Game 1 in 2018? This is what Nick Wright wants you to believe? See what I'm saying, guys? It don't add up. There have been many great performances, individual performances in the NBA Finals, in wins. Like I said, that resulted in wins. That their teams won, that these guys in the crown the bench and point the finger at their teammates and throw a hissy fit, right? Pout and moan on the bench, blame the coach, all these nonsensical things. There have been many performances, guys, right? Many. Jerry West was so great in the 1969 NBA Finals that the man won the Finals MVP in a loss. He won the Finals MVP while his team lost. Because this is how solid and this is how great he was and this is how clutch he was in that NBA Finals. But Nick Wright will tell you LeBron James Game 1 in 2018 in a series where he got swept 4-0. That was the greatest individual performance in NBA's history. It's a joke, guys. Once again, these guys have been exposed, lowering the bar and not giving you the proper historical context or the perspective. Not even respecting the history, guys. You know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.